So I visited two of the camps. The first one was in Austria. It was Mauthausen. It was one of the last camps to be liberated. And the second one was in Dachau, which is by Munich, which is one of the more famous ones. It's the one you see in Band of Brothers. I would suggest visiting if you have the opportunity. It is a very sobering experience because horrible, horrible things happen there. But there's something to be learned there. The first one that we went to, it was a really interesting experience because we had taken the train and we were waiting at the bus station to take the bus up to the concentration camp. And we ran into a kid, well, not a kid, a young man there, about 20 years old, 20, 22. He was also going to the camp. He was Jewish, and his grandfather had actually been held at this camp. And he was the first of his family to return to visit it. And so we got to go through this camp with him. It was an extremely, I don't know, it made it a little bit more real, I guess you could say. But watching him just kind of go through this experience of seeing what his grandfather lived. Mauthausen is famous for what's called the Todestreppen, or the death stairs. I don't remember exactly how many stairs, but there's a quarry which the prisoners were forced to work at the bottom of this hill. They'd have to carry stones up these stairs, and a lot of people died just because of the malnutrition that they were facing, and then having to carry these 30 to 20 kilo stones up this very steep staircase that went from the base of the quarry all the way up. And his grandfather could still remember counting all of the stairs, and when this young man was there, he called his grandfather and talked to him, and just to see that connection that he had was something kind of, it was sobering to understand how real it was, but it was also interesting just to see the healing that had taken place since then, since that had happened. Going through the camp, and after leaving the camp, the depressed, kind of very sobering feeling stays with you. And that's part of the reason why I would suggest going, is you build an emotional tie to something that, especially us as Americans, we only study in our history classes. I mean, we hear and we see how horrible it was, but it's still just kind of, we're not really attached to it. It's not really part of our history, so to say. Whereas when you do that, it becomes part of your history. You've been there, you've seen it. And you understand how much you don't want this kind of a thing to happen again. And my personal opinion is just, I'm very much for studying history, because if we don't learn from the past's mistakes, they're going to repeat themselves. And something like this should never repeat itself. And the more people who understand that, the more people who have that kind of emotional experience with that, the better off we are, or to say, the more likely it won't happen again, because we're aware of it. It's something that has been deeply impressed into our minds. That can actually be one point that makes it a little bit more difficult for Germans to come into our church. Is because of their history. They've seen how someone can very slowly deceive you and lead you into something to the point where just horrible and terrible things happen. And so it can make it difficult for them to trust kind of a large organization like the church, where people were looking from a very just kind of outside perspective. it can be just kind of seen as people following one leader kind of somewhat blindly. Just that's where the importance of teaching comes in, and especially working with the members, because then they see a member of the church and they say, oh, it's not like this outside viewpoint that I've seen. It's not just these crazy people I've met on the street who want me to do what they're doing. It's, oh, this person I know, he lives a good life. He doesn't just do whatever this person says he should do. And I think it just opens the door a little bit more for them.